All right, guys, I'm just going to tell it like it is. Schizophrenia is a death sentence. They don't talk about it. Nobody teaches anybody about it. Nobody educates anybody anything about this topic or other mental health disorders. But basically, just based on the statistical likelihood of people smoking cigarettes when they're diagnosed with schizophrenia constantly or more than the average population, or the rates of attempted suicide when you're diagnosed with schizophrenia, or the rates of successful suicides, which is something nobody talks about, or the rate of hard drug abuse, which is more likely to put you at risk of overdose. These three factors alone. I didn't even mention numbers. I think people are more like, I think it's 3 times as likely to smoke cigarettes if they're also schizophrenic than the general population. They're 4 or 5 times more likely to attempt suicide throughout their life than the general population, and they're about 2 or 3 times more likely to abuse hard drugs if they're schizophrenic than the general population. Now, the really scary part is how much stigma there is against schizophrenia and how much there is public funding into cures and treatments and things. If you look at those numbers, and by the way, if this video upsets you or it speaks to you or speaks in a way that you can't about your own disability or your own struggle, feel free to share or subscribe. But the thing is, if you take a look at other death sentences like cancer or HIV, the amount of spending spent on research into schizophrenia is non-existent. It's thousands or tens of thousands per capita that's spent, and it affects about 1 out of every 10,000 or 50,000 people. So it's not like it's a rare disease. It's just something that people don't like talking about. It's something that people are afraid of because of the way that media paints it for everyone else. The way that people talk about it is absurd and frightening, and it doesn't bode well for people who are diagnosed. So if you're diagnosed and you're going through these struggles, then I wish you the best, and I hope that you find some solace. If you know somebody that is diagnosed, or if you have known somebody that was diagnosed, that might not be any longer because they've passed away due to these risk factors, then I'm very sorry for your loss. I remember I did a video here a couple weeks ago, and somebody wrote me on LinkedIn and said that he'd lost his brother about 20 years ago, and he's still coming to terms with it now. And he wished he had known how to help better at that time. And that just speaks volumes. I think that people need to be more reciprocal or reciprocal. I don't know. I think they need to be more open to learning and to being more of a help for their loved ones than part of the problem. I don't know too much about his specific situation, but I think that he does feel very deeply about his loss, and he wishes that things would have turned out differently. And I mean, I've had people in my life. I've had an ex-girlfriend's father say that if he had known more about mental health 20 or 30 years ago, then maybe things would have ended up differently with his wife at the time, and they're now estranged. And that's just touching, and it makes me feel like things are slowly starting to mend, and things are slowly starting to come to a front, and people are learning more and being more open and reciprocal. I still don't know if that's the right word. Reciprocity is the right word for what I'm looking for, but that's not the word I'm looking for in that context or in that tense. Either way, it's not all doom and gloom. As much as it's a death sentence, it's also an eye opener, and it allows me to think in ways that I never would have thought possible before, and allowed me to approach problems and situations and arguments in a way that I never would have thought possible. Um, it just gives me a breadth and depth of perception and understanding that not many people can come close to. But at times, it's very hard to come to terms with all of that weighing down on every interaction that I have with a person or a group. Um, Anyway, I guess the point is, schizophrenia is a death sentence, and it shouldn't be taken lightly. And there should be more programs and more support and more research and funding into finding a cure or finding treatments for these people that are afflicted with this disorder.